What is up, everybody? Welcome to the wild card edition of the DFS MVP. I'm your host, TJ Hernandez, the director of DFS at 4for4.com, with my new co-host, Ryan Noonan. If you've been following 4for4 all season, then you probably know Ryan as the sports betting manager at 4for4. He's also the host of the Move the Line podcast, but he is also a DFS aficionado, and he'll be getting us through the playoffs this year. Ryan, what's up? How you doing? And what's going on over in the 4for4 betting universe right now?
What's going on, Tej, man? I was telling you before we got going here. I tweeted it out earlier today. Like I know that I've been part of the entity that is 4for4 for a couple of years now, and I'm honored to do so. But when I first got into, man, I think it was even Draft Street at the time. I don't even know when I first started playing DFS. One of the first pods I listened to was you and Raybon back in the day here on the MVP. So again, even though I'm in these streets here at 4for4, being a part of the MVP is a big deal, and I'm stoked to be here and rock the playoffs with you. So betting side's awesome, man. I'm excited with the betting, all we got going on. So if folks haven't checked that out, you need to do so.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Draft Street. I mean, we go all the way. This is season 7 of DFS MVP, so we got some years on us. But what is going on over in the sports betting world? Obviously, everyone's here for DFS, but there's a lot more to action to be had if you are in a state with legal betting, even outside of NFL. So what do you guys got cooking over there right now?
Yeah, the NBA streets are popping. We have a article up every week, mostly props, right? So sides and totals, even on the Move the Line shows, we don't spend a ton of time getting into sides and totals because they're as efficient as anything out there. So we spend a ton of time on props, right? We want to leverage Paulson and all that he does from a projection standpoint. So we try to do that on the prop side of the NBA. So our Discord is popping. Really proud of that. Golf, we started last year when I came on here full time, and golf really works really well. Not only against the schedule that we have for football, it's kind of have the same mindset where you have a couple days of prep for the start of an event, and then you can bet it individually for round by rounds. We have DFS there as well, and a big golf project on the back end that I'm excited to hopefully be able to talk about soon, but should be live if you were a golf fan before the Masters. So stick around and hang out for that. It is going to be really exciting. And we're still doing Move the Line. We still have 2 shows a week. We have the game-by-game breakdown and prop drops all the way through the Super Bowl. So really stoked about all the plans moving forward. We have some new sports we're going to dabble in here in a few months as well. Again, just trying to keep your thirst out there when football goes away.
Yeah, I mean, every year I have vowed to myself that once football ends, I'm going to become a PGA DFS pro, and every year I fire at the Masters, and that's about it. But now with 4for4 really getting into the golf side of things, and to a bigger extent BetSperts as well, our parent company will have a ton of golf content, and it's really the best way to maximize your 4for4 subscription if you haven't signed up yet. The rest of season DFS prices dropped down to $24. We're going through the Super Bowl, so still a lot of slates that you could hit there. And then the betting, $44, as Ryan said, multiple sports now. PGA just getting rolling, and I mean PGA, whether you're betting props or playing DFS, is, I mean, I would argue it's the best sweat of any sport. It's just an awesome way to sweat, and it's just really, really fun. You get that 4-day sweat, and it's just so much changes shot to shot. It's really good. And as you mentioned, that Discord, especially with player props, like you and Connor Allen are firing off so much info in there. But the thing about props is they move really quickly. They'll take them down really quickly. And if we're sharp guys like you and Connor are firing at them, you want to be in that Discord. So make sure you sign up for one of the subs, so you do have access to that betting Discord. Once we get our stuff together in California and we get our legal betting, I will be up in there, but I'm just sitting on the sidelines waiting right now. But if you do listen to DFS MVP regularly, this show will be quite different. Obviously, the slates for playoffs. It's just a different animal. We're not playing full slates, 2 separate main slates, one Saturday, one Sunday. So the format throughout the playoffs will be game by game rather than just our favorite values. We will talk about how we want to approach the chalk players in that game, the contrarian plays, and we'll give you a little wrap up of each slate at the end. So little different format, but I think this is the best way to do it. So let's hop right into it. The Saturday slate is a 2-game slate, kicking off with the Raiders at the Bengals. I believe the over-under in this one has actually moved. It was at 49. Let me double check that real quick. I think it moved down a little bit today, but the Raiders are still underdogs by 5.5 points. The Bengals are favored by 5.5 points, obviously. So, that line's still 48.5, so it didn't move too much. Raiders with a 21.5 point implied point total. The Bengals with a 27 point implied point total. And if you've been on 4 for 4, you will have seen that we do have ownership projections up for both slates. So if you're looking at the ownership projections, even though they all show up the same across all of your lineup generators, those ownership projections are for the Saturday slate specifically and the Sunday slate specifically. So on these 2-game slates, we're going to have crazy ownership projections. So the chalk players, we got Mixon and Jacobs. I mean, they're going to be used at least in 60% of lineups in large field stuff. And then to a lesser degree, Burrow will be the second most popular quarterback in the slate. Higgins Chase will be popular with Burrow. Waller Renfro will be super popular. And then Zay Jones will be very popular on DraftKings because he's so cheap, to a lesser extent on FanDuel. So, if you want to say anything in general about this game, go ahead. If not, what chalk are you liking in this game? You had a really good breakdown about this game today and some really good points about it.
Thanks, TJ. Yeah, it's going to be a good one. I mean, I think this is weird too. We have 6 playoff games and 5 of them are rematches, which is not something we typically see. So we do have a little bit to go off of. Again, we don't want to be making a ton off of 1-game samples, but the interesting thing with the Cincinnati side, and I think Mixon is a really good chalk, right? So early in the season, we were all really disappointed because we were expecting the Bengals to come out and be this pass-centric offense. And they kind of were last year, right? When Mixon was upright, they were throwing a ton. We had Jamar Chase. We're all excited for all the bells and whistles here. And they come out and they're pretty balanced and even run heavy. And I think that was probably to be smart to manage Burrow. And then as the season went along, heading into their bye week around, week 7, week 8, they really started to ramp up their pass rate over expectation. So then they come out of the bye in week 11 against the Raiders and everyone's thinking wheels up. And it's just all Joe Mixon, 30 carries, 123 yards, 2 scores. They barely threw anything it was one of Burrow's worst games from a statistical standpoint all season. He played well, from a completion percentage over expectation standpoint, he performed well, but there wasn't the volume, and that's what we care about on DFS, the DFS side. So I still think that it makes sense for them to go back there. That is probably their weakness, right? They are 30th in pass block win rates, and the Raiders rush only 4. Almost exclusively, more than any other team in the league, yet there's still a top 7 unit in pressure. So to really mitigate that, I think that they lean on Mixon, especially early in neutral situations. So it's one of those spots where 60% is heavy. It's a 2-game slate though. So it's almost a spot where I'm almost comfortable just trying to get ahead of the field and making him almost a lock button in that spot.
Yeah, I think in smaller field single entry stuff, it's really hard on a slate like this to pass up the chalk running backs. Especially on FanDuel where running backs are just better scorers. Whether or not you want to use a third running back is up for debate on this 2-game slate. I think it's a little more cut and dry on the 3-game slate, but I think Mixon and Jacobs are just very obvious plays that you really need to lean into. Like if you're building, say if you're playing a 150 max contest, I could really see being really overweight on them. Like the tough thing about the good chalk, bad chalk discussion on a 2-game slate is that I do think they are great chalk, both of them, Mixon to a greater extent than Jacobs. The issue is I think we need to focus on we're building around game scripts a lot more than we are our values, especially if you're trying to separate. So if I am really leaning on, like, say, a very heavy Bills stack, I think it makes a lot of sense to just differentiate with the Bills and play Mixon and Jacobs. I think if I'm going for the passing games and hoping for a shootout, hoping that 48, they go over that 48.5 points, I like Higgins and Waller a bit more. I mean, you talked about in your article today how it's just such a crapshoot with the pass catchers on the Bengals, and I agree. But Higgins is a really good value on both sides. We still need to open up some value, and then it's a really bad tight end slate, and Waller's just head and shoulders above the field. So I think Waller's pretty good chalk. The big thing about this game is the weather concerns. It just depends. It's going to be cold. How cold, that doesn't matter a ton. Like I don't think it's going to be like 0 degrees. I'm looking at NFLweather.com right now. It says 33 degrees with 9-mile-per-hour winds. If that is kickoff, if that's the forecast at kickoff, I'm fine targeting the passing games there. Obviously, the wind is the thing that can change. If it gets up to like maybe 20 miles per hour, then we start getting concerned. I think Zay Jones is probably the worst chalk on this slate. I mean, I know he's been getting a ton of volume, but like when you really need to separate from the field on a 2-game slate and just get really creative, I know you need to save salary, but this isn't like saving salary, with a guy that is the clear number one. Waller's back now. He didn't have a big game last week, but his utilization was up there. Renfro's going to be the number one. So, I mean, you're going to be eating the chalk on a guy. Sure, his targets have been up, but who's basically the wide receiver 3 if we include if we make Waller de facto 1 on a team where Carr just hasn't put up monster numbers. Now, if you're playing a heavy Carr stack, like, sure, play Zay Jones, but like to just play him as a one-off and eat the chalk, I just don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I agree with that too. I mean, it was an egregious misprice on DraftKings' part, but like you said, I mean, the snaps and targets are encouraging, but like there's still Bryan Edwards to mix in. I mean, there's barely anything to be said for Deshaun Jackson these days. He was barely involved at all, running some wind sprints on Sunday night against the Chargers, but like, I don't know. Zay Jones at the end of the day is someone that when you're looking at 30% to above Zay Jones as one of the only value plays in the slate, I think that there is an easy way to cross them off. The Jacobs thing is interesting. So I agree with you because, again, 2-game slate, we don't have a lot of choices. But I think it was interesting to see Jalen Richard come back last week and handle a little bit more of the passing game stuff. So the appeal of Jacobs has been the spike in passing game work since Kenyon Drake went down, and Jacobs can still see decent passing game work on early downs, which is nice. But like, if he's going to lose all the long down and distance stuff, all the 2-minute stuff, and this is like a really heavy mixing game where the Bengals get up, that is really difficult in the second half for Jacobs to get there. You're probably going to need a touchdown. So again, I wish that he was on the 3-game or the 3-game slate where there's just more dudes. But there are definitely holes, I think, in Jacobs and compared to Mixon. I think that, when you're looking at those guys, I think Mixon is definitely the way to go.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, just going back to that Zay Jones point, I mean, right now, and again, this is specific to DraftKings. I don't think he'll be quite as popular on FanDuel, but we have him projected to be in more lineups than Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill. I know Tyreek's banged up. CeeDee Lamb, Deebo Samuel, Amari Cooper, Gabe Davis, Deontay Johnson, Devontae Smith. Basically everybody except for Higgins, Chase, Evans, and Renfro. So like, all of those guys are just so much more liable to break the slate, in my opinion. I know we're talking about salary here, but you can get Gabe Davis at basically half ownership for only $400 more. It just seems like a no-brainer to fade to me. So on that note, obviously, we're going to have to try to get unique in a lot of ways. Are there any contrarian plays in this game that stand out to you? I think it's a tough game for contrarian plays, but I think there's a couple.
I think it is too. I think Tyler Boyd is interesting. You highlighted Chase and Higgins, and I think they are kind of the alphas here. Yeah. And Boyd's been disappointing. I mean, he really hasn't had many spike games, but the Raiders play a ton of zone cover 3. You can attack that over the middle. A friend of the show, John Daigle, has pointed that out in a lot of his stuff this week. And surprisingly, when you think about the Raiders, just from a talent standpoint defensively in the back half, they do not have a ton, but they've allowed the 5th fewest explosive pass plays on the season. So they've been able to limit some of the stuff over the top that we would profile Higgins and Chase getting. So Boyd underneath makes a lot of sense. You can make the same case for CJ Uzoma. Yep. Again, the only pass catcher that I think is going to be pretty low owned. And he's actually the only of these pass catchers on the Bengals side that has seen a higher target share against zone than man. So that kind of works well for him. And like you said, it's an easy way to get off of Waller, who is, I think, also good chalk, but again, is going to be massively, massively owned.
Yeah, I'm kind of trying to think about whether I'm thinking about chalk or contrarian plays. On these slates, I'm just thinking about like how are they fitting into my build. So I think if I am stacking with Joe Burrow, I think Uzoma makes a ton of sense just because he's massive leverage off of Waller. He's basically touchdown or bust, but so are all the other tight ends on the slate, not Waller. So if Waller doesn't score and any of these other tight ends do, like you're in really good shape. I think just car stacks in general are going to be very contrarian. When I say car stacks, I mean, again, we only have a 2-game slate. So I'm talking about like a Raiders onslaught and bringing back 2, maybe even 3 Bengals pass catchers, throwing in a running back if you want, but just like going all in on this game and having Carr, I think is going to be somewhat unique. And then another one, I think that Raiders pass rush is really good and Bengals offensive line is really bad. So I think just a contrarian way to approach the game is just to be really light on this game and play the Raiders defense. I think that's a really fun way to approach it too.
Oh, it's a great look. Yeah.
So with all that said, like obviously, we can make an argument for literally any game script in any game on a 2-game or 3-game slate. Like you just can, but like, how are you most likely to approach this game?
Yeah, just loading up and being completely overweight on Mixon, hoping that the Bengals roll like I think they probably can. He's another guy that he can get there. His early down passing game work has been encouraging too. So a little less script dependent than Jacobs is, as we were talking about earlier. So, and then maybe just avoiding, because again, if we have a replay of what we saw in week 11, I want to be a little bit underweight on Burrow and the receivers
too,
here. So kind of my approach.
I agree. I mean, I think I'm most likely to be underweight on the Bengals passing game on this slate. I mean, on a full slate, I tend to play some higher stakes, like small field stuff, so it's a little different than like playing a millionaire. But even on a full slate, I lean into game stacks more probably than the average player. So on a 2-game slate, I'm just going to do it all the time. Like I'm just not going to middle it and try to get like half my players from this game, half my players from other, and try to hit perfect. I'm going like heavy into these game scenarios. So I'm building for like a low scoring Raiders win with like I think. I agree with Mixon. You could still play the Raiders defense against Mixon. Like you're going to have to, like a lot of times on these small slates, you're going to play a player versus a defense they're playing, just the way it is. And it's fine. And I think they can get there that way. So like a double running back with Raiders defense, I think is okay. Or a shootout with Carr, I think as my quarterback. I think those are the 2 ways I'm most likely to play it.
Yep. I like it.
Moving on. Night game, Patriots at Bills, over-unders at 44. Patriots are 4-point underdogs projected for 20 points. Bills 4-point favorites projected for 24. Not a lot of the chalk is going to come early just because this game's going to be lower scoring, but Josh Allen is going to be crazy chalk. Stephon Diggs is his best pass catcher. Devin Singletary will come along by default, and then the Bills defense. We just don't have a lot of chalk on the Patriots side. That makes sense. Only projected for 20 points. Should be really cold, but I don't think we have any major wind concerns. Right now I'm seeing 5 degrees with a 5-mile-per-hour wind. It's not going to be a repeat of what we saw where Mac Jones throws it 3 times, especially after we saw Josh Allen go for, what was it, 303 in their final game against the Patriots. So I don't know if he can replicate that. Bill Belichick obviously is going to make some kind of adjustments, and playoff football is just different. But how do you see this game playing out, and what chalk do you like?
It was maybe one of the best quarterback games I think I've seen all season in that game.
Yeah, it was crazy.
He was unbelievable. That was kind of what I think we had been waiting for, and we had seen at times last year. I know that's your boy, but like he showed out in that game, and they were kind of special on 3rd down. I think to your point, it's really hard to replicate that. New England on the other side really struggled on 3rd down, so there's some of those things that are just going to even themselves out. But like, I don't know, man. Josh Allen is like just kind of an autoplay for me. Like there's really no one when you kind of think of the statues that we have on the slate. There's really no rushing upside to any of these dudes, and then we have Allen that offers almost a 50-yard floor. Has all the like red zone touchdown equity that you would want. And then, kind of we were discussing earlier some of the stuff around these situations where games that matter, big games and playoffs in particular, where you have these quarterbacks that are prone to run will run a little bit more. So if you look at those weeks leading up to the playoffs here, week 16 and 17, Buffalo needed those games. They needed to solidify their seeding. They needed to wrap up the AFC East. He ran 15 and 12 times in those two games. That's like a design run rate of 32%, which is almost double his season mark of 17. And there were a couple other big games on their schedule this year as well, at Kansas City and at Tampa. And he ran 11 times and 12 times in those two games. So we're going to see a lot of Josh Allen running. If he does anything that resembles what he did from a passing standpoint last game, you just need to have him. We can discuss kind of how you stack him, but he is almost a must. If, even if this game is low scoring, where, they stay in the 21, 24 range, he does so much with his legs. It's unaccounted for from a scoring standpoint. You have to have him.
Yeah, I think all the chalk in this game is good. Allen, Singletary, Diggs, and Bills defense are all fine plays, depending on how you're building. I think just looking at this game, what we have to consider, the most unlikely scenario is Patriots win a high-scoring game, right? Like if Bills get up big, it's like Patriots just aren't coming back like we saw in the last game. If it is a close game, most likely it's a lowish scoring game, like it's projected to be, with Belichick doing his thing, and then it could go either way. But my point is, I'm either like Allen, like you're leaning into heavy stacks, like, or you can just like single him, and still stack the game early. But we'll get to how we're approaching the game. But my point is, like, I think Allen is just the best chalk on the slate. On only 4 quarterbacks to choose from, so you can really eat the chalk on a play like that.
Yep.
So yeah, for me, Allen is the best play on the slate. How do you get unique on this slate? I think it's an interesting one. Yeah, I like the contrarian plays here.
Yeah, no one wants to play any Patriots, right? I mean, because like you said, we're no expectations. It's really hard to, pinpoint any receiving options for them. But in the running backs, they're using 3 dudes, right? We got Damian Harris, Ramondre Stevenson, and Brandon Bolden's been mixing in. But I like Damian Harris quite a bit if he's going to be contrarian. I think there's some matchups here that I think Belichick will take advantage of. When you look at from weeks 1 through 12, the Bills had the top run defense in the league from an EPA standpoint. And then Tre'Davious White went down, and you wouldn't think that he has a massive impact on the running game. But when you look at what they did schematically since, is they've gone to a lot of nickel and dime packages. So they've thrown more defensive backs on the field to kind of make up for the loss of White. And since that's happened, they are 27th in EPA against the run. So they are easier to run off of. They've gone from, less traditional base packages defensively and throwing more of the 185-pound dude that can cover out there, and they're getting run all over. So we saw even in limited fashion in that game where, Mac didn't throw it all. There's a little bit of a hammy. It's kind of where the hammy stuff started for Harris. He ran for 11 times for 100 yards, ran for, I think, 111, 3 scores the last time they met. So again, I think that they like Stevenson. They want to get him involved. But I think in this spot, we still see Harris more around the goal line. So he's going to have still a lot of early down stuff. And I think he is kind of more apt to be the touchdown guy. So again, if we're dealing with Singletary, we're dealing with Mixon, we're dealing with Jacobs, and no one wants to touch the Patriots running backs, I think Harris makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I like Harris too. I mean, the thing that worries me about this backfield now is they're back to a possible 3-headed monster with Brandon Bolden getting worked in. I wish Bolden wasn't getting worked in, because I think if you're playing like the Millie or something like that, I actually think Ramondre Stevenson would have been a very interesting play. But I think Bolden probably hurts Stevenson more than it hurts Damian Harris. So yeah, against the Bills' run defense, we know Bill Belichick's going to take advantage of that. Again, Mac Jones isn't going to throw 3 times, but maybe if it's close, maybe he throws 20 times at the most if they keep the game close. So that would be a big day for Harris. So I think you can include Harris in Bill's stacks. If you're stacking the Bills, my favorite ways to get unique are Gabe Davis and Dawson Knox. Again, touchdown or bust at tight end. Tight end just super weak after Waller, so just plug and pray for Knox. And then Gabe Davis, I think he's going to be. We have him a little bit over 20% now with Manny Sanders looking like he's going to play. I think it could be under 20%. So I like Gabe Davis there a lot. And then, again, Hunter Henry. We don't know who the hell is going to catch the ball for the Patriots. They're probably not going to throw a ton. Very unlikely anybody's going to get 10 targets and go for 100 yards. So chase that touchdown with Henry. Yeah,
these are the best 2 by far from a DVOA standpoint, defenses against tight ends. The Patriots have allowed 28 yards per game. So to your point, the last game, Allen was running in for a rushing touchdown. They just kind of flipped it to Knox for a touchdown.
Yeah.
So like that's it. That's all you need in the slate, especially if you are, even if he gets 20 yards in the score, that's going to be okay. It probably doesn't kill you unless Waller has a crazy game. But again, like a touchdown is all we need. And that's kind of an easy way to get it. And a nice, easy match with Allen.
Yeah. So with all that, like, what's your favorite way to approach this game? And then wrapping it all up, how are you most likely to build for this slate?
Yeah, overweight on Allen. And again, I think the discussion with Stephon Diggs is interesting because you figure I would say probably 75, 80% of Diggs are going to be stacks with Allen. So like he's going to be he just seems like a bad onesie play. Like if you're stacking some of the, the other game, you don't work Diggs in here at all. You spend up on the Cincy receivers or someone on the other game. So I'm interested to see what the Manny's saying. Like Manny was dusty before he even went down.
I know,
and
it's rough.
He's going to be like significantly less owned than the other guys. So Gabe Davis stuff is interesting. He was kind of a target hog, even trending upward with Davis in there. Or with Sanders in there. So he definitely is appealing. Sometimes they just are off. Like it was stunning, like 14 targets. He had 3 catches last week, which is, I'm just bitter. I had a Gabe Davis over 39.5 receiving yards, and he managed to parlay 14 targets into exactly 39 yards. So died by the hook on 14 targets, which is just wild. But his touchdown equity is nice too. So I think he'd probably be my preferred play in Allen stacks to get off of Diggs. But I think an interesting way is Singletary. He is kind of stacking him with Allen because I don't think people were going to do that. And he started to get a little bit more of that passing game work. You're just kind of hoping that between the two of them, they get all the touchdowns. Allen gets a couple on the ground, maybe throws a screen pass to Singletary. Again, we're trying to get really cute here on a 2-gamer to get unique. Maybe you're just trying to soak up all the Buffalo touchdowns with those two guys.
Yeah. I think what I'm most likely to do is some kind of Bills onslaught. And I mean, an onslaught with the Bills is going to be different than an onslaught with the Raiders or the Bengals because you have to factor in Josh Allen's rushing ability. So like, I don't know if I could, like, if I'm ever going to triple Josh Allen. I mean, maybe you just really gotta, have some huevos and do it because it is a 2-game slate. It's like they need to just hit so perfect, and like they need to drop like 40 plus for Allen to be able to cover a triple. Like unless you are including Singletary, it's just really hard to justify. I think I'm more likely to do like a Josh Allen double and bring back either Damian or Hunter Henry, or just like going light on this game and just playing like both of the running backs, Harris and Singletary, in like a very heavy Bengals Raiders build. So those are the 2 ways I'm kind of approaching. I think overall I'm probably most likely to go very heavy on the Bills passing game, or as heavy as I'm comfortable going, and then just trying to get really contrarian with the running games in the Cincy Las Vegas game.
Yeah, I like that. It's tough. Like you said, you have to be perfect on the way that the Bills are going to land on a stack going heavy with them. But like we're talking about a 2-gamer, and you almost have to be perfect in a lot of instances anyway, because it's just tricky.
Yeah, I made a note on Twitter yesterday about these 2-game slates, and the last like big two. There's a lot of 2-game slates every week, but they're very small contests. On Christmas we had a DraftKings Millionaire with only a 2-game slate, 21,317 lineups cashed. There were only 1,087 unique scores. That doesn't necessarily mean, that all those lineups are duped, but most likely they are. Sure. And out of those 1,087 unique scores, only 179 weren't duped. So you really, if you're playing the Millionaire or anything more than like a couple thousand entries, you need to go way out of your way to be unique. If you build a lineup that you feel like is good, that you're stacking, but you're using all of the salary, that lineup's probably going to be duped. So if you're really playing for first place, you need to have lineups where you're leaving $1,000 plus on the table. And it might look a little bit ugly and feel a little bit off, but it's just really hard to separate on a 2-game slate. Like just a 3-game slate alone, you have exponentially more builds and you could be more creative. On a 2-game slate in a classic salary structure, I think the best thing to do to separate from the field is to like leave 1,000 plus on the table. Otherwise, you're just really running into a likelihood of being duped.
Yeah, if you feel really good when you're hitting submit, you need to stop what you're doing because there's no chance everyone in it, someone else landed on that.
Yeah,
sure,
if you like your lineup this weekend, start over.
Start over.
All right, let's hop on over to the Sunday slate. 3-gamer, as I mentioned, you could play this a little bit closer to like a main slate build, but I still think it's a really good idea just to lean heavy into some game script narratives. Things are kicking off with the Eagles at Buccaneers. A lot of questions all of a sudden go into this one. Over under at 46. Eagles 8.5-point underdogs with a total of just 18.75. Buccaneers favored with a total of 27.25. Two big things we're looking at this game. Is wind going to be a concern right now? We have 20 mile per hour expected winds. That is dangerous. And then Fournette, we're waiting on the news for Fournette. It's Friday, so if he is healthy, if we get news tomorrow that he's a go, he will be very popular. As things stand right now, we have our chalk plays. Tom Brady should be popular-ish. And then Fournette, Evans, Bucs defense, Dallas Goedert, all very popular. I have Gronk question mark just because this is such a good tight end slate. I think that depending on what tournament you're playing and what size it is, we can see ownership between Gronk, Kittle, and Kelsey kind of really flip-flop all around, even vary from tournament to tournament. But Goddard will be a very heavy chalk. So what chalk do you like from this game?
Yeah, I do like Gronk because, like you said, I think it is a really loaded tight end slate.
Yeah.
But the Eagles have been kind of a sieve defensively. They have tightened it up a little bit, but they've allowed the third most targets to tight ends per game this season at 8.1, playing a lot of soft, deep zone, really trying to limit stuff. And they have really poor safeties and outside linebackers in coverage. So Gronk actually missed the week 6 matchup. Again, this is another rematch that we saw this season. But that was actually the only time we saw a pulse all season from O.J. Howard. He caught 6 balls for 7 targets in that one. So it's a nice spot. Again, we know all the issues going on the Tampa side from a wide receiver perspective without Chris Godwin, without Antonio Brown. So, I think in this spot where, again, some of the lower ADOT stuff over the middle of the Gronk might work in a situation where we're dealing with rain and heavy winds too, right? Versus pushing sideline stuff out against Darius Slay and Mike Evans. Gronk over the middle feels a lot safer. So, yeah, I mean, I think the interesting news here is definitely the Fournette thing because his price is kind of egregious considering his role before he went down. That's the big one to watch. But I'm okay with Gronk compared to some of the other tight ends here.
Yeah, as we talk through this slate, you'll see that I really like this game. So I think all the chalk in this game is quite good. I think the shakiest one is Brady. 1, because it's just a really strong quarterback slate. 2, because he doesn't run and the win concerns. But Fournette, Evans, and Gronk can get there. Maybe not all together, but they have passed to get there without Brady having a huge game. Obviously, the Bucs being favored by 8.5 make them pretty good chalk. And then Goddard's just a crazy value. I think as a standalone play, I think is very good chalk. I think you can make a lot of arguments to fade him because the slate is so strong at the position. So kind of waffling on Goddard just depending on my build. But I think if Fournette plays, Evans and Gronk are very good plays because Fournette will give them the ability to move the ball. They're still going to take their shots. They're not just going to they're not going to just only dink and dunk. They're not just going to hand it off 40 times. That's just not what Brady and Arians are going to do. It'll affect some of the efficiency of it, but I think they should still be fine in terms of being able to push the ball and get pushed. I think the Eagles can actually can push the Bucs a little bit, but I like them. I like most of the chalk plays in this game, and I think there's some really good contrarian plays. But before I get to mine, which ones do you like?
What about Miles Sanders?
Ooh, let's go.
I mean, no one's going to play Miles Sanders, right? There's another spot where we're using multiple running backs. Everyone has the perception that the Bucs have this just unstoppable run defense, and it's solid, but it's not great. It's kind of been middle of the pack really for the back half of the season. So, I mean, he actually ran really well in the first time that they met. But again, that was kind of the time where everyone was banging on Sirianni for really not running the ball or not getting Sanders involved. So, he has the ability to get involved in the passing game. This is just a kind of a slate-breaking guy where if you're looking for a spot to stack a game, he has the ability to break big plays, right? And that kind of flips this one in a big way where all of a sudden, okay, now we're forcing Brady to throw a little bit more. That just kind of changes the nature of this game. Yep. So I think that Miles Sanders is probably one of the best contrarian plays of the weekend.
Yeah, I am overly enamored with both Jalen Hurts and Miles Sanders. Jalen Hurts is probably my favorite play on the slate because I actually think this is kind of a bad line. I think it might be actually the worst line on the slate. I think the Eagles can keep this game kind of close.
It's a Brady in the playoffs line, right?
I mean, yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that's the thing about playoff lines, especially like with big name teams. I think you have to take them with a grain of salt over our regular season because these games are getting bet a lot more. So I do think there are some lines where Brady's type plays or like Packers type plays, I think they will get a couple extra points just because the public will bet those names so heavily. There's just so much more attention on these games that we could get some bad lines sometimes. So yeah, I definitely agree with that. And the thing I love about Hurts is he doesn't really need to care about the weather. He can be the QB1 on the slate because of his legs. He doesn't need to throw for 250 and 3 to have a ceiling game. The Buccaneers are vulnerable enough in the secondary where he can do what he needs to do through the air to have a ceiling game, but he can get there with his legs. And on such a short slate, you can get a sub 20% quarterback that can separate from the field. When there's 12 games, it's hard for a quarterback to separate. It just doesn't happen. On this slate, I think it can happen, and pairing him and Miles Sanders together, I think, is an extremely contrarian way to approach this game. Original co-host Chris Raybon for Action Network wrote a big article about like every team's weakness, and you mentioned the Buccaneers run defense. Everybody says how great they are. They give up a ton of explosive runs. That's what Chris pointed out. One of the worst teams in the league in terms of allowing the explosive runs. So Sanders and Hurts, that obviously plays into them. And then if you are going to stack Hurts or play Hurts, you get a lot of leverage with playing either Sanders or Devontae Smith over Goddard, because if Fournette plays, Goddard is probably the second most popular player on the slate. If Fournette's out, Goddard might be the most used player on the slate on both sites, save maybe Najee Harris. But the point remains, like, there's just a ton of leverage there with his teammates. And then on the Buccaneers side, if Fournette plays, we know the touches are going to be crazy concentrated between him and Evans and Gronk. But if Perriman is active, he'll probably play most of the snaps on the outside. Cyril Grayson is out, and Tyler Johnson basically only plays the slot. So if it's Perriman's active, I like him as an addition to game stacks. If he's out, Scotty Miller, you can plug in there as a really deep dart throw as well. Yeah,
I love to hear that you're on the Eagles, because I think that is something that people don't want, right? They're hard to stack in a way. We have too many running backs. The Goddard stuff looks nice because his usage is high, but like it's on such low volume all the time, right? And then I like it quite a bit. I think this weather is going to keep people away. I think you're going to have some nice, when things flip over on Sunday, I think you're going to like what you see.
So are we in agreement that our favorite way to stack this game is to lean into the Eagles? And I think you could bring back whatever Buccaneers you want, maybe even two of them. But I think the best way to approach this game is to lean into the running game for the Eagles.
Yeah, because I think when you see Hurts too, I think a lot of Hurts stacks will draw Goddard naturally.
Yep.
So I think going with Miles Sanders and Hurts is interesting. And then that's another spot where if you wanted to bring something back, I think that's a contrarian way to do so, is having Gronk involved in that, because I think you're going to see a lot of Goddard involved with Hurts. So I like it.
I'm very much in agreement with that. I will say, if you are playing this game in any capacity, I think it's really important that you do include some kind of Miles Sanders, Brashad Perriman, Scotty Miller play, because with a 3-game slate, late swap is huge. So to have those contrarian plays in the first game and get the information on how your contrarian plays do will give you a huge information advantage on the field. If they hit, if Miles Sanders goes crazy at 10% or Brashad Perriman goes crazy at 7%, now you have all this information of where you stand, and you can start really like moving your lineup around and playing these, leaning into these chalk players later in the game. So just keep that in mind. Moving on to the chalk players, 49ers at Cowboys, over under 51 points. 49ers only 3-point underdogs, implied for 24 points. Cowboys 3-point favorites. implied for 27 points. This is going to be the game that people are going to game stack. And it's one of the reasons I like leaning into the early game, because people are just going to be waiting to stack this game. Everybody's going to have these players in their lineup. Ironically, because of that, like, none of these players are going to be mega chalk because they're kind of going to cannibalize each other a little bit. So Dak will be probably toe for toe with Mahomes, is the most popular quarterback on the slate, maybe more so on FanDuel, and on DraftKings is a little bit more expensive. But especially on FanDuel, I think Dak and Mahomes will definitely be the most popular. And then Lamb, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Deebo Samuel, who's really expensive on both sides, and George Kittle. They'll all kind of eat into each other's ownership a little bit, but all of these guys will probably fall into that like 30 to 35% range. So no one's going to be mega chalk, but they're all going to be used quite a bit. I think more so we'll probably see like Amari or CD used in non-game stacks just because they're so affordable on both sides. Not super affordable, but they do fit into lineups pretty comfortably. So I kind of hate the chalk in this game, but is there chalk that you like in this game?
I do love Dak. One of my favorite bets of the week was over on attempts on Dak, because I feel like whatever the perception of the Bucs run defense is, that's actually the 49ers. They are second in both EPA and success rate on the season. They got two dudes, Eric Armstead and DJ Jones, that are top 5 in run stuff win rate on the season. So like we all know Nick Bosa, he's obviously good at both stopping the run and the pass, rushing the passer. So yeah, I mean, this is a really tough spot. And we've seen Dallas do this, not to the extremes like we saw in week 1, but we saw it in week 1 against Tampa Bay, where they came out and they said, okay, well, we know what Tampa does really well. They almost abandoned the run entirely. We had 58 attempts from Dak in that spot because they knew we have no shot of running into the teeth of their defense. And I don't know. I haven't seen much from Zeke other than last week's game against all the backups for the Eagles. He's just been pretty rough. So I just think that they lean really heavily on Dak to be able to move the ball here. And again, the volume is going to make up for a lot of the ownership here. So I do think that that's probably the best chalk in the spot. Some of the ancillary pieces, whether it's the pass catchers on Dallas' side or, anything on the Niners side, I think that they're all a bunch of really good plays. I don't know that I would want to play any of them into massive ownership.
Yeah. I mean, the problem with I agree with you. I mean, if I'm super gung-ho about this early game, so it's like kind of clouding my judgment on the later games. But, if I am playing a 20 max contest or 150 max contest, obviously you're going to have stacks of this game. You're not just going to ignore it. So I agree that I'm leaning way more on the Dallas side. The most likely outcome, I think, is Dak succeeding with his passing game. It feels like the Niners are kind of becoming the trendy upset pick this weekend. I'm just not into that. I think the Cowboys are actually a very, very good team, and I think they can make a lot of noise in the playoffs. But if you're playing Dak, you're obviously going to be bringing along Lamb and Cooper. I just don't see myself playing Lamb and Cooper a ton if I'm not stacking this game. I just think I like some of the early players more. But if there's a chalk player I like in this game, it's probably Kittle, just because the tight end slate is fantastic. So just from a game theory perspective, getting a 30% Kittle versus a 55% Goddard, I think it's just really hard to pass up. And that goes for all of the good tight ends on this slate. I think that's a really good way to think about it. So Kittle's probably my favorite chalk play on this slate. You said you don't like the ancillary pass catchers. You're worried about San Francisco's pass rush. So how are you getting unique in this game?
Yeah, I mean, we're thinking about some of the running backs, right? So I think it's really clear if we get Fournette and then what's happening in Kansas City with Darrell Williams, those feel like the really clear, obvious chalk plays are running back. Mm-hmm. So maybe we have a spot where I know you're not buying into it, but if it is a Niners game, Elijah Mitchell, like if he is going to be, he's active, he's the guy. We've kind of got a couple months of data points on this. So if he is going to, probably in the 20 to 25% range, I think probably, but again, definitely significantly lower than what I think we see from Darrell and Leonard Fournette. So maybe in a 3-gamer, he can pop as a little bit of contrarian. And then also you mentioned just kind of a layup as assuming we have to do something with Amari and CD. And I know I don't want to overreact, but like we've seen a pretty big bump in Cedric Wilson in the slot. Yeah, I mean, he's not going to play in 2 receiver sets, obviously, but they're going to, again, if this game plays out like we were talking about, where the Niners are able to run the ball well, the Cowboys are forced to pass, you're going to see a lot of, 3 receiver sets. So if we're going to get a spot where we're going to get maybe 85% route runs from Cedric Wilson at his price, I think he's a nice way to pair with Dak here.
Yeah, you made a ton of points that I want to touch on. I'll start going backwards. Cedric Wilson, if you think about if you are stacking this game, and I don't think you want to use Cedric Wilson as a one-off. I think you want to use him in stacks.
Agreed.
Just think through how you can be unique in the slate. It's not going to be an ancillary 49ers pass catch, like obviously Ayuk, but after that, like you just aren't going to use anybody super deep on the depth chart. And then on the Cowboys side, I just don't see how you can justify Dalton Schultz. You can't write anybody off on a slate, but with Jarwin back, Schultz hasn't been getting the same usage. And just from, again, going back to the game theory perspective, it's such a strong tight end slate. You're giving up so much equity by playing Schultz compared to the other guys as a contrarian tight end play that I think it just makes a ton of sense to play Cedric Wilson as the contrarian pass catcher in this game. Staying in the passing game, especially on DraftKings, Jimmy Garoppolo is so cheap compared to the field. If this game does shoot out, like he doesn't have to go for 303. Like we have 2 games that are expected to be blowouts and 1 game that's expected to be a shootout. So if he gives you, 250 and 2, he might do just enough to like keep you in the mix if no quarterback goes completely nuclear, and you're just saving a ton of salary and giving you a lot of flexibility at the position. You talked about Elijah Mitchell, and like you can't write off any game script in this on such a short slate. So I don't think I'll build around the 49ers winning, but the reason I do like both of the running backs, and you mentioned San Francisco's rush defense, it's not because I think either of them are going to dominate, but if you're building around a high scoring game, I think it's really interesting to like go light on the pass games and include the running backs. Sure. because touchdowns are very high variance, right? So if Zeke gets 2 or Elijah gets 2 and it's a 40 to 30 game and everybody's playing the passing game instead, you can really gain some ground by including the running backs in your stacks. And then my favorite contrarian way to play this, logically, if I'm really leaning into a very heavy stack in the early games, then I think that there is a chance that this game, I don't think it'll be low scoring, but at least hits the under, right? Like if it's 24-20 and everybody's stacking this game, it's going to be really hard for those lineups that have 7 players from this game to do anything. The San Francisco offensive line has they've allowed the highest adjusted sack rate of any team on the Sunday slate. The Cowboys have forced the most turnovers in the league. So I really like playing the Cowboys defense and going light in this game. I think that's my favorite contrarian way to approach this game.
Yeah, I mean, we know that they're a problem, right? They got, Randy Gregory, they got Lawrence, and Micah Parsons has been incredible. So yeah, they have playmakers, and we've seen Jimmy have a lack of pocket awareness at times, be prone to turn it over. We know that Diggs is very happy to jump a route and to take one back. So yeah. I mean, that flips this game in a hurry. And like you said, there are, I think, kind of some other defenses that are going to garner a lot of ownership. So I think that makes a ton of sense. I think people don't really approach attacking the Niners with the defense because they expect them to lean so run heavy, right? So we typically want pass heavy teams. So I think that's a really good look. Yeah.
I love the Sunday slate so much more than the Saturday slate because I just think there's so many ways to approach it, and I think a lot of it is going to come down to how people approach this afternoon game. So, and there's really just infinite ways to approach it because the game, there could be so much scoring, and if it doesn't go off, then you approach that way. So what's your most likely way to approach this game?
Yeah, I want to be heavy on Dak still. Maybe I have to wait and see. Maybe you've talked me into a little bit more Jalen Hurts. So Dallas ground game, full fade for me. I think that you make a good point that we could definitely run into 2 Zeke touchdowns, but you have to make decisions on slates like this too. You have to cross guys off the list. So Zeke is an easy cross off for me, just because Pollard is looking back and a little bit more healthy. So don't want to run into a strength here. So a lot of Dak and no Zeke.
Yeah, I don't hate scratching Zeke off the list. If we get like really gross weather news Sunday morning, I'll probably pivot to some really heavy Dallas teams, like lean into the Dallas blowout narrative. I like building around that script a lot. If it doesn't look too concerning. I like the Dallas defense, maybe just include, a Dallas Amari team and then just play the other games. I think that's really interesting. Just Dallas defense on their own with no other players in this game, I think is an interesting way to play it. So a lot of it's going to be contingent on that weather in Tampa Bay, but I like leaning into a Dallas win, man. I know they're favorites, but if the Niners are going to be the trendy upset, I like going against it.
Yeah, out of everything this weekend, it's the game that I definitely cannot wait to watch. I think there are just so many outcomes for it, and I think it kind of sucks for both teams. I think they really both have a chance to actually continue on. Like I think that they could both beat anybody. Yeah, so the fact that they have to battle in the first week kind of sucks.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. The winner of this game can make a lot of noise
for sure
in the NFC tourney. Final game of the Sunday slate: Steelers at Chiefs. Over under is only 46.5. This is another one that can have some weather. Should be below freezing, but not a ton of wind. So I think I don't think it'll be too big of a deal. Steelers 12.5 point underdogs, projected for just 17 points. Chiefs favorite at home. Implied point total near 30, 29.5, the highest on the slate. So with that high point total, all of the normal suspects will be chalk in this game. Patrick Mahomes will be the most popular quarterback on the slate. Tyreek Hill will be up there, but he'll probably be in that CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper ownership range. Kelsey, I mentioned him, Gronk, and Kittle will all be in that 30-ish% range, depending on how high Goddard gets. One of them, depending on your tournament, might fall off to 20%. It might be Kelsey that ends up falling to 20% just because he's so expensive. Darrell Williams, the best running back value on the slate, so he's going to be in every lineup. If Fournette is out, Williams might be like 80%.
For sure.
Najee Harris will be very popular just because he has the highest touch projection on the slate. The concern is he could get game scripted out really easily. Deontay, he's the natural bring back, so Chiefs stacks will bring him up, and then ton of people are going to use Chiefs defense. I think Chiefs and Tampa Bay probably account for about 70% of defensive ownership. So all of the chalk on the Chiefs side, except for, people use Najee and Deontay by default. What chalk do you like here?
Yeah, I mean, the Mahomes and Darryl stuff is so easy. The Chiefs defense is kind of my favorites because, the Big Ben thing is like, I don't know. I'm old enough. I remember good Big Ben, but it has been a very long time and it does not resemble anything that we see now. And like they have the worst, they're dead last in pass block win rate. But he also leads the league, so it kind of like masks it when you look at some like the raw sacks and pressure rate stuff because he gets the ball like it's like a hot potato. The dude wants to get rid of it as soon as he touches it. He like get it out of my hands. It takes out any ceiling that any of these dudes have. Like Claypool is just neutered. Like we can't see any of what he can actually do. Deontay, I think, is more talented than how he's currently used, but just in this iteration of the offense, it's really, really abysmal. So I'm okay with even as a one-off, if I wanted to kind of do where you were talking about last game with Dallas and kind of skip a lot of this other stuff in the game. I think the Chiefs defense is a nice one-off play, but again, you can't multi-entry, even 3-max and not have some Mahomes stuff too. Like he has torched this team in the 2 times they played, like 10.5 yards per attempt or something like that. Like, so it wheels up last time. They didn't even have Kelsey in that game and he destroyed him. So
yeah, I mean, if you're playing a bunch of lineups, obviously onslaughting the Chiefs is very much in play with the highest implied point total and everything that you said, and pretty much any combination of those 4, even jamming in all 4, I think is viable. But if you're playing like single entry or you're looking for a spot to be overweight, you have to take stands on these slates. I just feel like with the Chiefs being so much better with the Steelers and the Steelers running such a slow pace and their offense being so bad and Ben Roethlisberger just adding no deep value, Steelers games have only hit the over 5 times this year. That doesn't mean Chiefs can't hit their 30 points and just win 30-0. That's definitely possible. But I think there's a really high likelihood that the Chiefs defense plays extremely well, and they could just win like a 20-3 type game. And if that happens, I mean, obviously they still cover, but there's just not going to be a fantasy winner in that type of scenario. So I kind of like leaning into that game script. Get Pittsburgh out of town, take care of them easily, but you're not going to need to score 50 points to beat them. So I think Darrell Williams and the Chiefs defense are my favorite chalk in this game.
Yeah, I mean, you make a great point. So like we saw Tyreek, he's been limited the last couple weeks, kind of tweaked a heel last week in pregame warmups. Didn't play much the first time these two teams met, even though Kelsey was out of the lineup. So yeah, I mean, you don't want to get in a spot where you are taking something for granted in the playoffs, but like they very much could just steamroll them without much from Kelsey or Tyreek here. So like in this spot where there are two other scenarios other games where there are opportunities for the opposition to push the opponent that we're looking to manage the ownership with, right? Where like the Dallas side and then knowing what can happen with the Tampa Bay side. Like, I don't think the Steelers have the ability to push the Chiefs to a spot where it might not be able to justify ownership here. So I don't know. The Najee stuff makes me nervous, dude. Like he left last game, right? Hurt his elbow, came back, played the second half. He did not carry the ball in his right hand the entire second half. So like, I think he's probably good enough to play, but like, do I want to use him in a spot where, I'm looking at the Steelers team total under 17 as like a really nice bet. They just don't have, they needed a couple late garbage field goals to hang a 10 last time they were in Arrowhead. So like there's just nothing here on the Steelers side that makes me interested at all.
Yeah, I mean, on a 3-game slate, Najee is scary to fade just because he's going to get 90% of the backfield work. But I just don't see how like he has a big game, and then like from that potential game flow scenario, like if the first 2 touchdowns go to like Byron Pringle and Jerick McKinnon or something crazy like that, and their defense is just rolling, like all of a sudden, like just there's no way Tyreek or Kelsey are having ceiling games in that, or even Darrell Williams, even though I think he's more likely. I just think there's a lot of scenarios where the Chiefs just win it, 21-3 or something. So I agree with you there.
Even the Williams stuff has a little bit of holes, right? I mean, like he's dealing with a toe injury. We don't want running backs with toe injuries. Yeah, we saw that in the game that they played last time where Derek Gore mixed in like 12 carries, 3 targets, like a big play, like a 50-yard screen pass too. So like, I don't know, like I don't think that they're, again, we don't want to take for granted a scenario where it's a playoff game, but like they could very well, if they're worried about CEH in the next round with his shoulder, they might need to manage Darrell a little bit here. And they've shown the ability to go to Gore. So like, I know that Darrell is like on DraftKings, he's $5,500. If this stays even somewhat close with his pass game work, you have to play him. Fournette's out. Like, it's going to be so hard
I was just going to say, I need Fournette to play so bad. He's going to ruin everything for me. I need Fournette to play.
But yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. It's not super sexy, but like Gore and Chiefs defense, like you're holding your breath for like a first half, but in the second half, it's like Patrick Taylor last week. You just, you never know.
You have to do something crazy. Again, going back to like what we talked about to separate on these slates, it might take a play like that. So, I mean, outside of that, how do you like getting contrarian in this game?
Yeah, full fade of anything that has to do with the Steelers, and yeah, I mean Gore is kind of the look. 13.5 DraftKings points last time they played. Again, just I think even if we get glowing reports from Darrell, I think we see Gore at least mixed in a little bit, right? And if he breaks one, Yahtzee at 4K on DraftKings, like we're probably doing okay. Again, and I don't think there's a ton of opportunity cost at the running back position in the slate, and that matters too, right? We're not even in the first slate. I think there's a little bit more with all 4 teams having a back that I think is pretty viable. Not so much here. I'm comfortable, kind of doing what I'm doing with Zeke and crossing Najee off the list and kind of banking on maybe that there's something going on there with the elbow, and hoping that it's just kind of a Steelers dud, and I can kind of back into some sort of Holmes fade and Gore gets there late, and we're printing early. We're celebrating with our Jalen Hurts teams when Pringle catches that first touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite contrarian, I keep talking about that early game. My favorite contrarian take on this game is like maybe just playing Chiefs defense by themselves, maybe one pass catcher, like Chiefs defense with Kelsey, I think is very good. But if you're going to onslaught the Chiefs, I think playing a triple with Mahomes, fading Darrell, and including Pringle is a good way to be unique, because we've seen Pringle like get targets and get touchdowns with Tyreek and Kelsey both on the field, or exclude Tyreek from your stacks and replace him with Hardman, because Hardman's going to succeed without Tyreek. So if Tyreek is limited or they score early and decide, Tyreek only needs to play half the snaps, that's how Hardman succeeds. And then bringing it back, like I guess you could bring it back with Ray if you want. I don't love it, but if you're going to go crazy heavy on this game and want, like, say you don't want to include one of the ancillary pass catchers, say you want to go a double with Tyreek and Kelsey, bring it back with Ray and McLeod instead of Deontay. Ray McLeod saw 20% target share in the last 2 games. Again, you're getting those 5-yard dink and dunks from Big Ben, which is why I'm not on Claypool instead. But I guess on DraftKings you can make the case for Ray.
Yeah. I'm probably just trying to be underweight on the Chiefs passing game and hope that it doesn't burn me. Like you said, we get a running back touchdown, or we get some sort of a block punt. We get something that kind of turns and kind of just takes the air out of the the double stack that I think is going to be pretty popular.
Yeah, so let's wrap up this Sunday slate. 3 games, and there's lots of ways to approach this. How were you? Let's say you got one single entry bullet. How are you building?
I'll probably be able to a Dak team. Dak with, I would include Cedric Wilson in that just to get a little bit off of the CD and Amari stuff. Mm-hmm. Try to get maybe cute at running back in the second slates where we're talking about Miles Sanders is a great, high leverage, high ceiling play. And again, trying, like you said, go contrarian a little bit early, I think was a great call by you, because like you said, that information is priceless. Yeah. And we try to go off the board a little bit, knowing that we're going to be running into a lot of chalk in the last 2 games. They are going to be way more popular. If you nail that stuff early, you are sitting really nice to be able to leverage the late swap opportunities to really maximize what you want to do with the lineup. So I think that is a great call, and probably the best way to handle this one.
Yeah, I think my favorite way to approach, again, if I have one bullet to go on Sunday, I like a very heavy early stack with Jalen Hurts. If Philly keeps it close, I think that game could be very high scoring. Even with the weather, I think both running backs can succeed together. I think you could get away, like if you want to play chalky Goddard, I think you can get away with Hurts, Miles Sanders, Goddard, and Fournette, and include at least one Tampa Bay pass catcher. Like, that game can hit that perfect, I think. So playing that, sprinkling in Dallas and San Francisco players I like, and then maybe just playing Chiefs defense and hoping that trend of Pittsburgh games just being really slow and really low scoring holds. I just love that. I mean, the thing that sucks about it is you're going to have to hit and hold, like you're going to need to be up on the field and hope nobody catches you. Yep. But hey, it is what it is. Obviously, you're going to be paying attention to late swap. I'm going to probably try to leave $500 or $600 on the table depending on how my late swaps are available. But I'm comfortable just fading that late game and hoping that a really good score hits perfectly for me.
Love it. Yeah, I think it is a unique way to approach it, because like you said, those last 2 games are definitely going to be where everyone's going.
Yeah. Well, that does it for the wild card round. We have content up on the site for both of these slates. Everything we just discussed is in written form. We also have content up for every single showdown slate this weekend. Ryan will be rocking the Discord for all of your betting needs, so make sure you check that out. If you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure you are subscribed to the 4for4 YouTube channel and check out the audio version on whatever podcast platform you prefer. If you're listening on the podcast platform, come check out the YouTube. Please rate and review on iTunes. And if you're on YouTube, please like and make sure you're subscribed. Like I mentioned, the rest of the season price down to $24 for the DFS subscription, $44 for betting. Again, going through Super Bowl for DFS betting, it's not stopping because we got all the sports. So make sure you're over there, and make sure you're following all of us on Twitter. 4for4 is at 4for4 football. Ryan is at Ryan Noonan. TJ's at TJ Hernandez. We'll talk to you guys next week.